Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at Retroarch, which is the emulation backend used in the RG351P, which I covered in my last video. A lot of people find its interface very daunting, and I'm hoping to make a guide that isn't too intensive, more for the casual user like myself, while also giving as much information as possible. As usual, there will be timestamps in the description, as well as chapters located in the time bar on the video. So let's get started. When you first go to their website, you get a nice, it's a nice interface, very simple. It just says get RetroArch, or you can try it online. Now, the only way to try it is if you have ROMs or CDI files or ISOs, and the only way to get those is to rip them yourselves. There's plenty of information over at the ROMs section on Reddit on how to do that. I recommend going over there. And anytime you need any help related to emulation, I recommend just Googling it and adding Reddit afterwards. Tons of information online. It's a great way to find out everything that I've found out throughout the years of using RetroArch. So it shows you the features. It's got all these great things here. You can go through it yourself. It shows you the new updates, the interface. You got cross-platform, it's Netplay. It's very configurable. When you get into the advanced stuff with it, it's super configurable. But this is cool. It's got achievements. Just like Steam or any of your consoles, you get achievements. And Netplay, like I said before, and you can record and stream via RetroArch. It's very intuitive, very nice. You've got a news section, got your downloads. So click the download section to get RetroArch, and you can get it for any of these operating systems. Here we've got Windows all the way back to 95. We've got Linux, Raspberry Pi, Android, iOS, and Apple TV. And look at that. And all the way down here to PlayStation. They even are working on it for PS3, PS4. It's crazy. They've got videos on every single one of these pages to teach you everything that you need to know. If you have questions, you can go over to the frequently asked questions. You can browse. They have 40 questions here. I'm not sure if they have any more. It's kind of basic stuff, but people ask about this stuff a lot, right? They even have an interface section, give you an idea. This is the XMB interface. It teaches you enough, not enough so that you know what you're doing, but it kind of teaches you like what they have here, right? This is what you're going to see. But you can go over here. They've got Netplay browsers, so you can play with your friends. You've got the one-on-one section. This kind of teaches you about what cores are, what shaders are. Teaches you that RetroArch has shaders, right? So shaders, super cool. Kind of make it look like an old TV, or this little new effect here. It's supposed to be like modern, I suppose. You can even add stuff like console images, which make it look like you're playing on the consoles themselves. And videos on downloading and upgrading shaders. Yeah. And there's Discord integration, so you're able to show your friends what you're playing, and that's pretty cool. It even shows you how to use it. And then achievements, as we mentioned before. There's a website linked here. It tells you what you have to do. All you have to do. And this website looks really weird. It's got like a classic internet feel to it. Just create an account. Create an account and log into that account in RetroArch. And I'll show you how to do that later on in the video. It's going to be down on the timestamps. We're in the docs section. That's under help, docs. So in help docs, it kind of welcomes you to RetroArch, gives you, tells you a little bit about it, what it runs on. We've got some official links. You got your main, your help, your support, some videos. They got their storefronts. They're on Steam and itch.io. Now, the important links are over here for right here for users. We're users. We're using this software. So it teaches you how to get started on Windows. So if you're using Windows, you want 7-zip. They've got an age-restricted YouTube video you can watch here. I use the nightly, as I mentioned before. It teaches you how to start RetroArch. Your menu might look like this. It might look like this. There's a couple of them. But it tells you how to start everything up right there. I've got it for a couple of other operating systems as well. There's user guides. Teaches you about the user interface. Then we got input and controls. Now see, this looks like a lot on the left here, but it's not, I promise. And we're going to go through every single one of these things inside of RetroArch, so we don't have to go through these user guides, but they're here so that you're able to come back to their website and go to their documents, which is basically a tiny wiki, and you can go through it all yourself, just in case you forgot. So this is where we want to be. We want to be in the BIOS information hub. This shows you what you need to pretend that you are the console. So let's say like that. Let's just say we're pretending that RetroArch is the console. Now to pretend that the core in RetroArch is the console, you need the right BIOS. Now you can locate the BIOS as before. Reddit is a great source of information, or you can rip them yourself. Now, a BIOS, in case you don't know, is a system inside of, like, let's say a motherboard that kind of makes sure all of the parts are working and in the right spot, right? So in this case, it's going to be looking for like the computer, the CPU inside of your console, or the RAM chips inside the console that are soldered on the motherboard. The cores pretend that it has those things. It tells the BIOS that it has them, but it should work just like you have the console itself because you have that BIOS file. So here you can go through, you can read about this stuff. It tells you where to put it, but core specific BIOS information right here. This is the important one. This tells you what needs BIOS. Not everything needs BIOS, but a lot of consoles do. Super Nintendo does if you want to use specific ones here. So like if you want to use high accuracy core or the Beast Nest core, you need specific BIOS. If you want to play some certain Game Boy Advance games or color games, you need BIOS. Okay, so last bit of information on the website that you're going to need is located on the left as before. In the emulation section, you go down to, let's say, Nintendo emulation, and you can see there's compatibility lists. So you go to Game Boy Advance compatibility list. Here we've got a core. So this is GPSP, that's the core, and it shows you what games are not compatible, what issues they have. VBA-M has no issues. These have all been solved, as shown by the hash throughs. And VBA Next has a ton of issues. If it's not on here, that means it doesn't have issues. All the games run, etc. You can go to, say, like NES Beast Nest, right? So this shows you what extensions it takes, what the core is licensed under, who the author is, what features it has. It shows you how it works, right? So they have the compatibility lists, they have guides, and that's pretty much all the information that you need on the website, right? So let's get to downloading and installing RetroArch. So after you download RetroArch, right, you go over here, download. We'll download, for me, I'll download the nightly. I'll save the file. You're gonna get a setup file. You don't necessarily need 7-zip because it does come with a setup. So you click next. You can look through the terms of agreements. You know, it's a general license agreement. Accept the code, the terms of agreement. Then you put it in the folder that you want to put it in. Now, I already have it installed, so I'm not going to do that. Then we're going to head down here to my RetroArch folder. So you're going to see all these files. They're going to be very confusing. You're going to wonder what all these are. Well, these are all what they say. These are folders that you can modify, you can add things to. We're not going to be doing any of that. This is your saves, screenshots, where all your screenshots go. And all of these are system files, right? These all make RetroArch work. We're going to go all the way down here, and you're going to see there's 3 RetroArchs. We have Angle, Debug, and RetroArch by itself. We're just going to open RetroArch. And here it is. Mine may look different than yours, and we're going to go through. We're going to show you all the stuff. We're going to talk about what you need. Right when you start up RetroArch, you're going to need to set it up. You're going to have to go into your settings. I'm going to use my controller. It's already plugged in. Everything's working, but the arrow keys and enter are for selecting. Backspace is for going back. So let's say press backspace, enter, backspace, back and forth, just like that. So your drivers. My input driver is SDL2. They've got a couple of options here. The input raw but I like SDL2. It works for me. I'm not sure what the other ones do, honestly, but I use X input. You can also use direct input. I'm not sure what SDL2 and HID do in this situation. The video driver is usually determined by your video card. Now, I use Vulkan because I'm using an AMD card, but if you have an Intel card or an NVIDIA card, you might think about using OpenGL, which is GL, or you could use GL Core or GL1. You can also try Direct 3D 11 or 12, but most applications do not use them. A lot of them don't use Kaka, GDI, or SDL2 either. So your best bet is GL through Vulkan. Before I get to audio, if you don't know what graphics driver you have, you're able to see it in the video section. If you go to output, it's right down here, the GPU index. It'll show you what video driver you're using. So I'm using an AMD Radeon RX 5700 XT as shown. Alright, so I have the audio driver set to X audio. The other ones can cause stuff to crash, so it's important to use X audio. CC, you start out on SINC, but you want to use CC. Most things crash or the audio lags behind when you're on SINC. So menu, I'm using Ozone. This is what the whole menu looks like, this thing I'm going back and forth in right here. You can use RGUI if you want. That's what my RG351P uses. XMB looks like a PlayStation 3 menu. And I'm not sure what glue looks like, or GLUI, but it's something you can try out. And these are just recording and MIDI stuff. We don't have to worry about that. We don't plan on recording anything or using MIDIs. If you do plan on using those, I recommend looking up stuff in the documentation on the wiki, or perhaps finding a guide that covers those specific things because they're a little bit confusing. So in the video, we have CRT switch res, and that's for CRT televisions. You can also change your output, which is where we found, the AMD Radeon RX 5700 XT. You can change your monitor index, display which screen it's on. You can change the video rotation. And the screen orientation, which would be if you want a vertical monitor perhaps, or if you're using an arcade machine, right? Change full screen settings. Here you can change your windowed mode settings. It's very self-explanatory, but we're going to go through them. Well, scaling is kind of important. You want integer scaling off. It can mess up a lot of games. And you want your aspect ratio to be core provided. Now the aspect ratio is stuff like 16:9, which is widescreen, or 4:3, which is like the old CRT monitors. Or not monitors, but CRT televisions. We used to watch things in 4:3 back in the day. Well, today everything's in 16:9. And you can set it to be 16:9. So you have all sorts of aspect ratios right here. But core provided will make it so the device determines what size your screen should be based on the console that you're using. And a lot of these cores or consoles have in like settings within them where you can change the aspect ratio using hacks that are a lot cleaner than using the scaling option. So it's best to just do core provided so that nothing gets screwed up. You can mess with it though if you'd like, if you really want to. It's important to mess with stuff. It's important to come through. Don't be afraid to screw anything up. You can't screw anything up. If something's not working and Retroarch crashes, it just goes back to the previous settings that it had. Now, synchronization settings. You can have VSync on or off. That's up to you. It depends on how strong your computer is, what the frames are. I have 60 FPS. I can show you right now. It's at the top right. I have this set to 1. This effectively halves your monitor's FPS, as it says. 1 is just base, right? That means it's at 60 FPS. Do 2, it's 30. 3, I think it's 15. 4, it's like 5 or something. I'm not sure. I've never really done it. This is just if you want a game to run at 30 FPS or lower. Perhaps the game never really ran at 60 FPS and it's having some issues. You can delay the frames, which adds a delay after VSync in milliseconds, so 1, 2, etc. It reduces latency at the cost of video stuttering. And this here is default at 3. I'm not sure exactly what it does. I think this just means it's tri-buffering, and that's dual buffering. That's just single buffering. It kind of determines what VSync you're using, which determines what your tearing might look like. But most of these games I haven't experienced any tearing with. I can't even think of one at all that I have. Now, sync to exact content frame rate. This is your G-Sync, FreeSync monitors. If you don't know what that is, that's a different type of VSync. And it's very smooth, completely eliminates tearing. If you have one of those monitors, you're going to want this on. You also have HDMI 2.1, you want this on. All right, so we're down into some other things in video here. We got suspend screensaver. You want this on. This will make it so that your monitor, your computer, whatever, it won't go into screensaver mode. It won't black screen. That can actually cause some issues in Retroarch sometimes, cause it to crash. It's very finicky program, but it's one of the best. Threaded video I have on. If you have a high-powered CPU like I do, I have a 5600X, this should be turned on because you obtain full speed performance this way. Without it on, you can have a little bit more lag, your frames might drop. I've never tried it off. This is just what I know from experience with other emulators specifically, but you can try turning it on even if your CPU is weaker. I honestly believe people turn it on with Raspberry Pis, so you might not need a super strong PC. It's worth testing though. It's worth testing. Now this right here, this one's a little bit confusing. Black frame insertion. If your monitor is, let's say it's above 60 frames, you got 75 to 244 frames, right? This will insert a black frame in between every single little frame. And that will help eliminate ghosting, which is when it looks like duplicates of your character appearing on the screen, right? So, test this out. It goes all the way up to like 5 frames. I'm not sure what GPU screenshot does. Bilinear filtering, do you want to turn this off? This will add a slight blur to any of the images. A lot of cores already have bilinear filtering inside of them if they require it, okay? That's mainly like PlayStation, some Dreamcast, some Nintendo 64, but does not need to be on for things like Game Boy Advance. This setting turns it on for every single game, and it will make pixels look terrible. So you're playing Pokemon, it won't look very nice. This is important for screen grabbing software, like picture taking software. If you have shaders turned on, this will help fix any graphical issues when you try to take a picture of a software. And this video filter applies a core-wide, game-wide, every single game you play, no matter what console, it'll apply a filter to it. So you can set one if you'd like. This is mostly for people using specific machines. Perhaps they have an arcade setup, or maybe they have a machine only for Nintendo 64 output, right? They usually have that filter on, and then they'll lock the system so you can only play those games. You can't edit any of the settings. That's what's that is what that's for. Or it could be for you if you'd like to have an LCD look to every single screen. I mean, it's up to you, but it does use a lot of power. I don't think it's worth it because you can set your own things in every single separate game, every separate core, you can set your own shader. And Retroarch's all about customization. So you really limit your customization options when you do that. So next we're going to go to audio. The output kind of something that we've already looked at. You want this on, so you have audio. The audio driver is X audio, if that was in driver. This lets you choose what your audio device is. I wouldn't mess with it. It kind of default chooses. You can change the settings in Windows. When you click on this, it brings up a text box. And the latency is 64 milliseconds. That's default, and it works well. The resampler needs to be CC. You can change your quality. Depends on how fast the games are running. If you're having bad performance and the audio is making a lot of really bad garbagey noises, doesn't sound right, laggy, might want to lower this. Keep it on normal to start. Kind of see where you land. If you think you can go higher, definitely go higher. And the output rate, keep that at 48,000 at the start. Unless you know that your headphones or your sound setup can output more than 4800 hertz, I wouldn't change this. You want it to be synchronized, so you turn this on. This kind of changes the audio pitch. So this can help in maybe PAL games, which are European games, if you have any of those, where the frame rate was a little bit slower than in America. So you can change this setting to make it sound a little bit more accurate to the American timing. And then dynamic audio rate control helps smooth out imperfections in timing when synchronizing audio and video. Be aware that if this is the approximate, it's really possible to. Okay, so you want this on. You can change this back and forth to kind of figure out what, like if your audio isn't synced properly, you can maybe mess with this until it is synced. We don't need to change the MIDI settings or the mixer settings. Menu sounds, you can mute them, yes or no. It's pretty much just enable OK sound, cancel, notice, kind of just enable sounds for you, right? Mute your audio, mute your mixer. You can mute when fast forwarding. This might be a good thing to do because fast forwarding music sounds extremely bad. Now, volume is gain. If you don't know what gain is, I'm going to explain it like this. Put it in very simple terms. If your headphones are maxed out and you can't hear the audio, right? You're like, wow, what am I doing? Like this, it sounds so low. Just turn it up. Makes it louder, like way louder. If it's too loud, you've got your stuff set to 1, you know, and this is the loudest game you've ever heard, right? You just turn this down and it gets quieter and quieter and quieter. That's all it does. This just determines how loud your audio is. That's all it does. Then the DSP plugin is kind of like a filter, an audio filter. So you can bass boost, you can do chip tune enhancements, make it sound kind of like you're in a choir. You can do crystallizer filter. Now this is core wide, just like the video filter before. It can only be changed here, I believe. So it's important if you want that kind of filter, you set it. I test different ones, see how they sound, figure out what feels good for you. Now input would be your controller or your keyboard. So polling behavior, no clue. It has something to do with latency. I have it set to late. You want remap controls for this core on. This determines what your controls will be for a core. Like let's say you change them to your own custom controls, it will remap them, or it'll automatically remap them so that your controls are set properly for that console instead of set up just like your Retroarch normal controls here. You want auto config on so it automatically configures your controller, just plug and play. This determines how sensitive your buttons are, I believe. The input button access threshold. So, you know, light push, if you go down, a lighter push it'll activate sooner, right? And instead of, if you want it to activate a little bit later, you know, you raise it. So it determines, I'm pretty sure that's what it determines. I might be wrong. And I'm gonna mention that I might be wrong. So you can mess with it, see if it does anything, if it's noticeable at all. If not, I'd just keep it at 0.500 to be safe. Analog dead zone. A dead zone is kind of like an area where your analog stick does not work. So you can increase this if you have, say you're playing a game and you just start walking left without pressing anything. You'll want to turn your dead zone up because your controller is possibly messed up. You want it to be dead in the area where it's attempting to move without you controlling it, right? So the sensitivity is how fast your stick works, you know. These bind options you can keep the same. They have to do with the input when you're changing controls. That's all they are. It's just when you change your controls, it takes 5 seconds before it stops asking you what button you want to press. This is like, oh, it takes 2 seconds. You hold the button for 2 seconds that you want to become another button. When turbo buttons are enabled, they're enabled for 6 frames. For 3 frames, 6 seconds. So if you turn turbo mode on, turbo is when you hold down a button and it just goes. It goes. So if you're playing a button pusher, you know, a button tapper, you don't have to tap it. You just hold it down instead of breaking your thumb. They got default buttons here for whatever you want to set the turbo to. I think you hold down that button and you press another button. So I'll set mine to L3 and we'll see how that goes. I haven't used it much. This I have turned off. It's default on. It detects input from accelerometers and gyroscopes and luminances. It's kind of, it has performance impacts, so I'd just turn it off if you're not actually using anything that has a gyroscope. And most games don't need a gyroscope. This determines your haptic vibration settings. I think this is for Nintendo Switch controllers. I have a controller plugged in, it doesn't have any setting. Unified menu controls, you want to turn that off because it'll make the controls for the game and the menu the same, which you don't want for some games. You want to turn on menu swap, OK, and cancel button. These are normally turned off. They swap the buttons for OK and cancel to the American style instead of Japanese style. It's kind of like a PlayStation controller. In Japan, you press the circle button or the B button to, select something. Then A is back. Here, this will make it so your A button or X button is confirm, and then circle and B are your cancel buttons. Hotkeys are awesome. You've got the confirm quit hotkey, got the menu toggle gamepad combo. Now, confirm quit would be you press escape twice, Retroarch closes. That's all it is. If you press it once while it's off, it'll close. You want that to be on so you don't just accidentally close Retroarch and screw yourself, lose all your save data. You've got the menu toggle gamepad combo, controller button combinations to toggle the menu. Now this could be cool. You can press down, L1, R1, and Y to open the menu. The menu is this. This is the menu. What we're doing right now, this whole thing is the menu. So you can open this in game like this, if you'd like. I have it set to none. This button here makes it so you have to press a button on your controller to enable hotkeys. So if I pressed it and press select, now select has to be held before I press, say, R3 on my controller to activate turbo. That way I can use the R3 button in games that need me to use the R3 button without activating turbo constantly. And here just determines how many seconds you have, or frames, not actually seconds, I suppose. These are just your frames before the hotkey enable button stops being active. So 5 is a very short amount of time. So you just hold down select and then press the button. I have my fast forward toggle set to R3 right now, but I'm thinking about changing it to that button, which is LB. You can add a hold. Toggle means it turns on and off. Hold, you just hold down the button. You've got a slow motion, so turn that in now. You got load state, save state. So there's my save state. There's my load state. There's save state and load state. If you don't know what save stating and load stating are, by the way, save stating is when you create a save right there in the location that you're at. Your full screen toggle turns full screen on and off. This allows you to close the content if you want to. You can quit Retroarch with escape. So close content just closes your game, pretty much. This changes what save state slot that you're in. They have 9 or 10 different slots you can choose to save in. This is the rewind button. It's very cool. I think I might actually put that on my X, I guess. So it's select X and I'll be able to rewind the game. Now this one's kind of for something. This is for recording, so we don't care about that too much. Pause. So this switches running content between pause and non-pause states. So you're able to pause your game if you want to. So I'll go ahead and boom. This will reset the game. This loads the next shader, previous shader in your video directory. So if you've selected a shader, which we'll talk about later, as I've mentioned, this will just go to the next one or the previous one that are in the side of the same folder, right? Same thing with the cheats. Whatever cheats are in that folder, it'll go back and forth between them. This toggles your cheats on and off. Take a screenshot with the F8 key. Mute audio with F9. Nobody wants to turn on screen keyboard on. It's kind of gross. I mean, you can if you want to. It's F12. It didn't even come up for me. So, and then show out FPS is F3. So you see the top right. Pressing it, it's turning it on and off. Then you can send debug info to Retroarch if you have an issue, and they'll analyze it. And you can do Netplay. So you can turn Netplay on and off. You can spectate or play in Netplay mode. Turn your volume up and down that way. You can change your overlay, similar to the other stuff from before. Similar to the overlays in the cheat index, just goes to the next overlay in the folder. This will eject the disk. This will go to the next disk, the previous disk if you're playing PlayStation 1 games. This will grab your mouse and pull it off screen, make it hidden. Game focus will focus on your screen. It'll remove the mouse, and it'll also get rid of all of your hotkeys. You won't be able to use any of your hotkeys. It'll make it just like you're playing it on the actual console. But this you should keep off. You shouldn't really turn it on. This is mainly for, once again, specific devices like arcade machines, like cabinets that people are making, where they don't want anyone to edit the settings. Desktop menu is kind of cool. It's not super helpful though, and it's not a standalone thing. It just pops up over RetroArch as you already have it open, so I wouldn't mess with it. And this switches between the menu and currently running content, so that's F1. So I have that set to my XM, like my Xbox button on the middle. You can record, stream, you can turn run ahead on and off, and run ahead just, I'm not really sure what it does. And the AI stuff translates or reads aloud any on-screen text apparently. Just kind of cool. And this is just your controller. So I'm using an Xbox One controller. I have it set to left analog and analog to digital, and the device type is RetroPad. You can try RetroPad with analog, but there doesn't seem to be much difference between these two. I haven't seen one. You just set all your buttons to whatever you want them to be. It's self-explanatory. Turbo is for your turbo button. So whatever you want that to be, you set that. And that's input. Latency, we've already kind of messed with. This is all stuff that I've already seen. This is core settings. You want to allow cores to switch video driver. Load dummy on core shutdown. So these two are very important. Allow core to switch video driver. Allows whatever console you're playing to swap your video driver. So if it doesn't support like Direct 3D 12, it'll swap it to Vulkan. Or if it doesn't support Vulkan, it'll swap it to OpenGL, right? So your stuff works. Okay, so load dummy on core shutdown. Basically, if RetroArch crashes, it won't crash completely. Sometimes it'll load a dummy core, which will prevent RetroArch from shutting down. So you don't have to reopen it. You can check for missing firmware before loading. So this one I would turn on, I have it off. It just checks your BIOS to see if you have the right BIOS. If you don't have the right BIOS, it'll just show a black screen. You'll think, why is this not working? So I'd turn it on so it could check beforehand. I know I have all the BIOS that I need, so I have it off. And allow rotation will rotate your screen depending on if you have, like, let's say an arcade machine or something like that. It'll auto rotate it, right? Not an arcade machine. I mean, you know, if you're using like an arcade core that has a certain rotation, it'll rotate it. It'll automatically rotate it, I guess. And you don't need to mess with manage cores. Configuration, you want to go in here, you want to save configuration and quit. So every time you quit RetroArch, it saves all of the configurations that you've done. All of this stuff. You want this on. This loads any customized options that you have right at startup. And this will load similarly any customized configurations. This will load any configurations to your controller. So you want all of these on, and then you want global core options off. Okay, global core options will save all of your options to a common settings file. You want to be able to edit all of those options separately, so you want that turned off. There's only two things that I really want to talk about, maybe four in the save section. You can kind of go through these, read what they say, and get an idea about what you want to do. I don't want to go through every single one, but the big things are auto save state and load state. So this automatically makes a save state when content is closed. Okay, that's kind of amazing. So let's say you're playing something, you load it up, you spend about 3 hours playing, and now you're bored. You close RetroArch, boom, saves your game. You load back up RetroArch, you load up that game, boom, automatically loads that game. That's what this does. And then the other two things I'd talk about are the compression. Save RAM compression reduces file sizes of your saves, but increases loading times. Same thing with save state compression. That's about it with saving. Logging, just kind of everything's off. It's for a very specific thing. It's for finding errors, right? It logs your performance. It's for developers and debuggers. This changes some file browser stuff. You want these three on. I don't know what filter by current core does, but it doesn't affect gameplay. Frame throttle settings, these ones are important to edit. You can manage your rewind settings. You want rewind support on. You can choose how many frames it rewinds, how fast it rewinds, how many megabytes it saves of data, right? This is how much history of the rewind that it keeps. Just don't have to mess with this. Fast forward rate, I have it set to 10. You can change this, figure out what fast forward rate's good for you. This is how slow it goes in slow motion. You want to, once again, turn this on if you have G-Sync, FreeSync. In the menu, you want to cap the frame rate. You don't want it going up to 240 or something crazy. Just keep it at whatever your VSync is. So make sure that's turned on. We don't care about recording settings too much. I doubt you'll be recording from Retroarch. This just changes some overlays. So if you want an overlay, you can display it. It's a little bit confusing. If you just want to play games, none of this stuff really matters. You can turn off the on-screen notifications if you don't want those. We don't really have to change anything about the UI besides turning on show advanced settings. That we do need on. We don't need to do anything with AI service. Accessibility is if you want to hear the text-to-speech stuff. There's no power management settings on PC, but if you have a little device, there usually are. Now, achievements. If you want those on, put your username, your password in. You can turn on hardcore mode, which disables save states, cheats, rewind, pause, and slow motion. You can turn on the leaderboards. You can send detailed play statuses to the Retro Achievements website. Get your achievement badges. Test unofficial achievements. There's an unlock sound for verbose mode. You hear that? Pretty cool. Oh. Retroarch sound just started working. That's loud. Start the session with all achievements active. Automatically take a screenshot when achievements earned. A lot of cool stuff you can do. You just type in your username, your password. Okay, so we're out of the achievements menu. Now we're in the network menu. Boy, my ears. So yeah, I would recommend muting. Gosh, I would heavily recommend turning off menu sounds. This is absolutely terrible. That is the worst sound I've ever heard. Network. This changes your network settings for Netplay. Playlists. This has to do with this as well over here. These are your playlists. I've never really messed with these settings before, so kind of gives you some information. This is your user privacy and accounts, your username for Netplay sessions, stuff like that. Discord rich presence on accounts. You know, you get your retro achievements, your YouTube, your Twitch that you can connect. So Netplay, you can select the username. So like I go by Slipping Stones. So if I Netplay, I'll be Slipping Stones. And then this changes the directories where all files are located. Got your favorites, your history. You can import content. So when you import content, this is important. If you have ROMs, you're gonna have to scan a directory. So for me, it's D ROMs. I say 32x, right? So you scan that directory, and then all of those files will appear slowly over time in the directory that you've created, which would be 32x for me. If you have a file that's not appearing, you're going to want to do a manual scan or scan file, right? So if you do manual scan, you choose what the system is. So like let's say it's an Atari game, right? An Atari Lynx game. And you don't have to specify the core, but you're going to want to choose the content directory where it's located, right? I don't have any Atari games, but if I did, you know, it'd be in the Atari section. Then I'd scan, and we'd see if it show up. The Explore section lets you look for developers, your publishers, your release year, players, how many people can play them, the genre, origin, franchise, system name. Like you've got all of them in the search section. It's pretty cool. I've never really done it, so you could go through the genres. You'd be like, oh, I want to play a puzzle game. So here's some puzzle games, right? And it shows every single console when you do that. Main menu. If you want to download cores, let's say you've finished setting everything up. You've exited Retroarch. You got everything saved. You're ready to play games. You go to main menu. You want to do the online updater. You want a core downloader. Now this is a big list. You can use RB, LB to skip through it if you've got a controller. That's L1, R1. Now let's say that you want to download Sony PlayStation, right? You might want DuckStation. DuckStation works pretty well on lower end computers. So does PCSX Rearmed. If you want like the best experience possible, you're gonna want to get Beetle PSX HW. That's the important thing about checking all of those files on the wiki. If you go to whatever section you go to, it will show you what games are not compatible with different emulator cores. So you want to get the cores that have the most compatibility, but you want to also get the core that works best with your system. So you might not have the best compatibility, which is why DuckStation and PCSX Rearmed are here. DuckStation is kind of like the newest, greatest thing, but not everything runs perfect on it all the time. And then PCSX Rearmed is kind of the oldest, but works. It works well for older computers. It works well on not as powerful systems like the RG351P. You don't want to play PSP on here. I want you to know that right now. On Nintendo, they've got a lot of them. Like I said, just go check. Look for information on Reddit. Look for it in Google. There's a lot of different cores. All of mine are what a lot of people consider the best cores, I guess. It's like I'm using BSNES, but I'm also using SNES 9X. I only use BSNES because it has like a widescreen mode, right? But SNES and X is like the best core that you can use, especially the current one. The 2002 and 2010 are best for some games too because they have compatibility issues. Then like Parallel Nintendo 64 is good for some games that are harder to run. Then Mupen 64 is better for accuracy, but it makes it even harder to use. So you need a really good computer to use it. That's kind of important. And you can update your content, your core, your assets, your controllers, your cheats, databases. This is like, I mean, everything. You can even get thumbnail downloads. So you can update your thumbnails. It'll show like a thumbnail on the right there. It's like Mortal Kombat 2 shows up right there. It's pretty awesome. See, look at that. All those thumbnails. But yeah, we're going to go into PlayStation. And like I said, we're going to play Breath of Fire 3. I think that's a good game to kind of show you some stuff. So we'll use PSX HW. And it's gonna close RetroArch, then reopen it. It looks like I didn't log in properly on Retro Achievements. That's okay. So here we go, we're speeding it up. Sounds kind of like garbage. So see, my controller's not working. Like, why is it not working? It's crazy. The hotkeys seem to be working, right? But why is my controller not working? Well, let's go down to controls. So this is the quick menu. This is a whole new section, right? It's got the resume, restart, close. You can take a screenshot. You can choose your state, save, load again. You can even undo your save states and load states if it was an accident. You can add this to your favorites. You can record, stream. You have more options. You've got your on-screen overlay, a video layout, rewind. You got so many things here, right? But we're going to go to controls, and we're going to go to port 1. So we're using a DualShock, but maybe this game requires an analog controller. That didn't work. So let's try analog joystick. Didn't work. PlayStation controller. There you go, now it works. So we're going to want to go over here and save game remap file. Save core saves to the entire Beetle PSX HW, like at the console, but this will save this to this game, and this game needs it. So we're going to make a new game. We're going to go ahead and name ourselves Ryu. We're the cute little boy Ryu, the blue hair, the dragon clan. We'll go ahead with fast, be the red brown. There's a lot of polygons here. The thing is I believe I already have this game set up. Now, let me lower the resolution to 1. So this stuff, if we go into our options, it'll show you your renderer settings. It'll always, you can create a game options file up here. It'll always make it initially, but you have to create one yourself too, so you can load it later. So there's a lot of options in here, right? They're all going to be very confusing, but you just read what they do. So you see now the game looks a little bit more blurry. This looks native. This just looks right. Like everything looks good, right? There's no more lines or seams anymore. Everything looks good. everything looks good. This is basic PlayStation. But once you start going into widescreen, we're going to get into this battle and then we're going to go to widescreen. You'll see. So we'll increase our resolution. Let's do it 16 times. It's going to restart, bring it back up. Okay, looks fine. It's pretty good. Go back in. We don't want dithering. Dithering, I'll show you what it looks like. It adds this weird effect. Very weird effect over the screen. Right, so we're going to turn that off. Turn texture UV offset on. Now that'll offset the textures to make it more accurate. Keep texturing filter. Well, you can change the texturing filtering. I have it on nearest because this is a pixel game. It kind of makes it look accurate to the pixels, but you can change it to like XBR and it'll smooth things out a little bit. So you see there, things are a little bit smoothed. Bilinear is blurry. So we'll go back to nearest. Now this is going to show no information available because I made the select button. My hotkey button, that was a mistake. You can exclude sprites from filtering so you can kind of make the background look better. So I'll do that real quick. It didn't really work. Yeah, they're 2D polygons. That's interesting. You can turn smoothing on. Super sampling makes things run faster, but it only works with Vulkan. It's kind of weird. I don't know how to explain it, but it kind of explains it right here. It'll make the internal resolution lower, but it increases the speed while also making the graphics look better sometimes. It's kind of weird. This increases the quality of playback of FMBs in PlayStation games. So this I usually have on memory plus CPU, which is buggy, but it reduces jitter. Has a high performance requirement though and can cause various geometry errors. I had that set to 1, I had culling on, vertex cache, perspective corrected texturing. So these things all correct a lot of issues in the game when you turn on widescreen mode, which I haven't done. I've lost widescreen. So where's widescreen? Widescreen mode. Okay, now the game's widescreen. We see that there's some blurriness on our guy down there at the bottom left. I'll be honest, I remember this game having a lot of graphical issues when I first played it, but nothing really happening. It was adaptive smoothing. So, but you get the idea. You can see it's very customizable. You know, and if you've got issues, you just kind of mess with the settings. You read what they do. It's all very daunting, right? But if you slow down, take the time to kind of figure out what they all do. I'm trying to get like a view of this crystal. I swear this crystal was a buggy mess. So look at that. Look at how that's kind of like right below me on a little dragon. See how it's shaking back and forth? That's weird. That's not normal, right? So we'll go into our settings and let's turn that back to nearest. Oh, so it's really gross, isn't it? It's very messed up. So we'll go in, we'll go to PGXP operation. No, sorry, PGXP primitive culling. And this improves appearance by reducing holes in geometry. So let's see what that looks like now. Okay, so it didn't fix anything. Let's try the vertex cache. It redraws polygons, can make them look a little bit better. Okay. Perspective corrective texturing. That fixed it right there. That corrected the textures because they were at a very weird perspective angle here. And they were just wobbling back and forth, but it fixed them. And these crystals, they're going to keep moving. That's just the game. So you kind of get the idea. There's a lot. There's a lot. But you just always check your options. Go through, make sure everything's set up right. Just read everything. It's very simple. And it'll change from game to game. Okay, not every game is the same. And not every game can be perfect. So I can go down to a game that I love. Legend of Legaia right here. Open it up. Load my state. You see, the world is kind of iffy here. My character looks a little bit weird. He's got some. He looks cross-eyed, honestly. And one of the biggest problems with this game is the menus. So we're in the menu now, but we can go down here, and you see I have a couple of these on, a couple of these off, because they fix things, right? Every time you change one of these, though, the menu gets messed up, and you kind of have to find the one that fixes everything. So we'll go through, we'll do our thing. Beat these guys up. Speed it up just for the sake of time. It's possible they've updated the core since I last used it. I think it's pretty good here. Characters look okay. The beds kind of have like a weird thing going on. There's some black lines happening there on that bed now, so that didn't help. That made things much worse. So we'll turn that off. I'll check and see. Still a black line there. See, not every area is going to be perfect, and I have experimented with this in every single area of this game, I swear, and you can't, when you do widescreen, there's just a lot of errors that can occur. I mean, even here, for some reason, Retroarch just froze and fixed itself, just like that, just fixes itself. So now the character's got a black mark on his arm. It's definitely not normal. There you go, see, it's not turning black on this side anymore, it's just kind of more brown like it should be. But now there's texture error on his front. So it's just so finicky. I mean, you really gotta mess with it. You can do so much and you might not fix anything. I didn't fix it. Game looks great. Didn't fix the issue. Now you can really tell that's a polygon error. It's happening with the textures. And then there's just that black polygon error there too. So I mean, it's not perfect. Even at 1x, you still get you still get that error. It's still down there, and you can even change this to. It could just be because it's widescreen. So every time you want to do widescreen mode, you're gonna get errors like that. So you turn off widescreen mode. Let's see what it looks like. We still have the error. It could just be the game. Like I said, not every single game is gonna be perfect. And now there's this weird shadow error here. So far, I don't have that black dot anymore. That's one thing. It's definitely been fixed. Yes, that shadow's not fixed though. So I don't know. Ah, yeah, you see his shadow's flickering too. So it's like, what can you do, right? How do you fix these things? Sometimes you can't fix them. I mean, I could turn off the frame buffer. Frame buffer actually is important. That makes a lot of stuff, like a lot of effects work in games. So maybe if I go to native, still had the error. I can still see it right down there. So even at native resolution. Sometimes you just have to deal with those issues. Like I said, nothing's perfect. And see, this could just be the game. It could just be in this area here. I mean, look, my feet literally disappear right here. I mean, very interesting how it's just that area where I'm having issues. See, here I am here. Like, what the heck? It's fixed. Just magically fixed. That's kind of a rundown of how that goes. I mean, with these 3D games, you're going to deal with that. Just runs. Just works fine. No problem whatsoever. And you might notice the colors look a little weird, right? This is simulated to look like a Game Boy under the sun. But you go in the options, see there's less options here.
So choose your Game Boy model. Game Boy model. It's auto detect. Definitely want that on. Color correction. Turn it off. Look at that. It's perfect 1-to-1 color, just like that. Speed it up. Get through that. It's bright. Looks just like you think it should look. You can turn LCD ghosting off, and look at that. You don't have any of that ghosting that I was just having. Smooth experience, but this kind of replicates the ghosting experience of an LCD screen. So you see how when I move, it kind of blurs. Whole screen kind of has a little blur effect to it, but speed it up, it's even more noticeable. Turn it off. Non-existent, no blur. Everything's smooth, looks like rolling hills, right? So let's talk about shaders. We're sitting here, it's like, wow, this looks like cool and all, but I want it to look more like my Game Boy from when I was a kid. So go to setting, main menu. Go to main menu. We will go to the quick menu. We'll push up and then go to shaders right here at the bottom. So video shaders we want on. You're going to want to load a shader preset, and you're going to want to load slang. Okay, GLSL and CG are not for PC usually. GLSL is for older computers, but if you have a modern computer, you're going to want to use slang. GSL is also for small devices like the RG351P, for instance. So here we've got all these different shaders, and you should try them all out, figure out what they do, what they look like, how they work. For me, let's say handheld, right? Go down. So we got some LCD grid patterns here. So we'll do Game Boy Advance, color, motion blur. So look at that. It's like being on an actual Game Boy Advance. We can even go back to shaders, and we'll load a new shader. We'll go back to slang. We'll load like cell. We'll do this one. So it adds kind of a cartoony effect. You can even do. There's a really cool one that I like. I think it's the Royal. This one's really strong, so it's a little laggy. Look at that one. That one's got rounded edges. Kind of like a vignette going on. Do the eagle shader. It's a very common shader, so just to make things look a little bit more high quality. You can do motion blur. You can do a raw palette, like NES raw palette. I don't know what this is, but we'll do GTU Famicom. So that looks like a debugging, a debugging shader. So Nintendo DS plus color. Let's check that out. So this is supposed to look like a Nintendo DS. So I'm sitting here, I'm playing Pokemon on my Nintendo DS now. That's what they've got. It's awesome. It's amazing. And there's even shader resources online that you can look up. You just search up Retroarch shaders, tons of them. We'll run from this battle before we dive. It's so exciting. It's just so nice. That reminds me, on-screen overlays. I didn't talk about them. They're a little bit complicated, but right here, you can choose an overlay preset. See, these are all over the place. I think I have a Game Boy Color actually, so I'll turn that on. Boom! Look at that. I got a little power button over there. It's supposed to look like I'm playing on a Game Boy Color. It kind of cuts off the screen, which is why you have to do a custom resolution. Kind of squish it down, fit it into the screen. But it's super cool, and I have it zoomed in. I believe you can go turn the auto scale off, and you can scale it yourself. So see that? See if I can bring it back in. Yeah, see, so you can scale it yourself. Make it more widescreen, smaller if you want. Make it bigger. And there's different types of overlays. This isn't the only type. I like the auto scale. because there's a lot of settings in there. And this is an overlay for if you're playing on your phone, right? It's a phone overlay. Then you've got effect overlays, so CRT bezel. Let's do vertical. That's kind of weird. They got borders, keyboards. There's a Wii overlay. That, I don't know what that is. That hurt my eyes. There's patterns. There's a checker pattern. There's this one, which CRT speakers, right? Super cool. Here's one that literally is a DS. I can't see my screen. You'd have to set your screens up to fit in there, but it's literally a DS. Like, wow. So I like Desmume. Melon DS is new. I haven't tried it yet. But you see, I have my screen set up like this, and at the bottom right, that's my touch screen. I can actually use R2 to select stuff. So go into your settings, go to options, and you can choose. There's a lot of stuff here. I'm not using OpenGL, so none of that matters. I'm using Vulkan. You can change the internal resolution, so the screen is bigger. It kind of helps make games less blurry. Here's what's important though, your screen layout. So you can choose to have it top and bottom like this, classic, right? Or you could do the hybrid layout. You do hybrid, so hybrid top will make the top screen your big screen, and the bottom screen your small screen. Well, you don't have to do just this one. You can change it to the other one. So we're using the bottom screen right now, right? So that's our focus. So we're gonna like Mike E. Okay, with 2 E's, why not? I'll be like, yeah. So maybe this game plays on the bottom screen, right? Let's get the attack pack, sure. Yeah, so our bottom screen's our main screen, right? The Union Tenement will soon commence. So whatever screen's your main screen, you can make that your main screen. And you can choose what your pointer looks like, what type it is, all of that stuff. So my pointer type is a mouse. Touch, if you have a touch screen. Change your mouse speed, your rotation, your color. Make it black, red, yellow. I have mine set to white. You even have a button that makes microphone noise, so if the game requires that. And you can go to controls, port 1 controls, and you can set it up. These are all basic, but then you get down. Yeah. So okay, so right here you tap stylus. This is my right trigger. And the right stick is always going to be emulated as the mouse. Okay, now I think that's it. I don't know what else I can go over. If there's anything else that you need to know, just let me know. This was as fast as I could possibly make it. It's going to be a lot. Talked as fast as I could. I'm going to put a ton of timestamps for different things, kind of get some information in the description, hopefully, post some links. Hope you guys have a great night. Thank you so much for your view. I appreciate it. And I just hope you all enjoyed the video. All right, bye.